Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Goon Squad. It's Hump Day, and today with me, our head honcho, Bobby Melendez there, creator of the Fins Talk Network. Please like, subscribe. If you're not on the YouTube link, get out of where you are. Click the YouTube link. And today we roll out our red Goon Squad carpet, and we welcome Wes Goldberg from Locked On Heat. Welcome, Wes.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Our pleasure, man. And also, last but not least, the Miami traffic hating. We got him for a few more months in the city. Show some love to Kenny Spence from the Miami Heat beat. How you doing, Kenny?
What's up? What's up, man? What's going on? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, pleasure having you guys. Since it's four of us, I'm gonna take it right off the bat, and I'm gonna go directly. I'm so happy that the Kevin Durant situation was quote unquote resolved before our show today, because we've been in a stalemate. The whole NBA has been completely waiting. Free agents haven't signed. Families haven't moved. We haven't talked about anything else. I just want to get a quick take on you guys, how it all played out in your mind. Did you see this end result coming? Because even me and Bobby, we've talked a few times before. As it got further along, you kind of started seeing the stalemate, and there was real no leverage in either way. And you can't just trade Kevin Durant to trade Kevin Durant. So I'll start off with you, Wes. How do you feel that it played out? How do you feel was a resolution the best case scenario for everyone involved?
Well, the resolution was the best case scenario for, I think, KD and clearly I think it was the best case for Brooklyn. But I don't know if it was the best case scenario for the teams that wanted Kevin Durant, including the Miami Heat. But look, am I happy that they didn't end up trading Bam Adebayo for Kevin Durant? Yeah, but I don't think that was really ever on the table anyway. So, like, how happy could you be about something like that? I don't know. The whole thing is a little sad, isn't it? Like, Kevin Durant tried to use his leverage, tried to sort of bring out the player empowerment cards and put them all on the table. And Brooklyn just sort of saw the cards, called his bluff, and they're like, nah. And nothing happened. And you know, you mentioned the word stalemate before, and it just felt like everything Kevin Durant kept trying to do was to break the stalemate, right? Like, he demanded the trade. Mm-hmm. The report gets leaked that he demanded the trade. They try to create leverage through the media, and you have these things about how he met with Joe Tsai in London, and he demanded that Steve Nash and Sean Marks get fired, or he get traded, or one or the other. And Brooklyn again was just like, nope, we're good. We're not going to do any of that. We're not going to do any of that stuff. And there was just never any movement. Like, when stuff like this happens, you need things to impact the market, and nothing ever really impacted the market. And there's a lot of reasons for that. KD's contract length, 4 years left on it, and all these other things. And it kind of just like he just threw out a lame duck of a trade request, and now he's there having to rescind it, give out this public statement on Twitter and all this stuff. And it just sort of I think it's the best case scenario again for all parties involved, but it's also just a little sad for Kevin Durant and his whole story that he never quite could do what LeBron did. Like, LeBron is like the player empowerment, like czar, like the mascot of player empowerment. Every time he wants his way, he gets his way. KD, always sort of playing second fiddle to LeBron, tries to pull the same stops, and it's just like, nah, didn't work for you, bud. Just didn't work.
And it didn't help him at all that he just basically, this is the first year of a 4-year extension that he just signed that is going to go into effect this year. So it's brand new. Kenny, what do you feel, man?
So as soon as he demanded the trade, the first thing that came to my mind was Kobe in 2007. It was like, all right, well, Kevin Durant is probably a top 2 player in the league. The price for him is going to be really high, and he has those years on his contract. He's not getting traded. I'm not even going to acknowledge this too much. And then you saw the impouring of these offers coming out, and then the Nets were like, the first thing they said, if you remember, was we need a historic package for Kevin Durant.
Yes.
And so who really has that right now? The Hawks kind of blew their load with the DeJounte deal. The Minnesota Timberwolves did the Rudy Gobert thing, which is a whole other topic. And so Kevin Durant just wasn't going to get that. And then when you really think about it also, the Nets have done so much for him and for the star players, quote unquote, there. I figured at that point enough would be enough. You got to think about, so they could still have Jared Allen right now.
Yes.
But Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving wanted their friend DeAndre Jordan. That happened. they hired Steve Nash. They could have got an experienced coach. They could have. I think Mike D'Antoni was coaching nobody at the time. That would have been great.
Yeah.
They went. They got Steve Nash, Kevin Durant's guy from the Warriors. James Harden wanted to be traded. They didn't trash his name. They just did it. They brought in Ben Simmons. He still didn't want to play. They let him sit on the bench. All this stuff. They just let him go. So Kevin Durant demanded a trade in the offseason after he just signed this extension. I expected them to be like, yeah, nah, you know what? We're not. No, we're not doing it. And so I predicted from day one he wouldn't be traded and they would end up just sticking together.
And the squad that they had, you even mentioned D'Antoni. D'Antoni was an assistant for Nash. He was his top assistant when Nash got the job.
He was.
And then he left, remember? He was there for like, I think, a full year, and he left. They were saying to pursue other coaching openings, but really nothing has happened in regards to that. So, like you said, they've catered to them completely. And Bob, what do you feel, man? Because I know me and you, we've talked so much about KD lately, privately and on the Goon Squad. So, how do you feel? I'll get your intake too.
No, man, I'm just happy it's over. There's some clarity. I'm glad it didn't go straight into the season and cause a distraction.
Yes.
And, with Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. And, when you have an opportunity to get a player like Kevin Durant, who's top 5, right, in the NBA, one of the better players, you're going to want him. I know a lot of Heat fans are upset because they didn't get Kevin Durant, but, he wasn't available until after he said he wanted to be available. I agree with Wes, when he was saying, about not giving up Bam Adebayo. And, now you get the opportunity to see how those guys perform next year with this current squad. Now, that doesn't mean a trade will not happen with, maybe down the line. I don't think it's over. That's something I would like to get the guys' opinions on. Do they think the Kevin Durant saga is actually over? Does this revisit next season or by the trade deadline? And not with the Miami Heat, just with the Nets, because it's an awkward situation because, like Wes was bringing up, demands a trade, then says, okay, we'll fire the head coach and the GM. And it's like, okay, now I'm going to stick around. So now you got now that it's going to be, and where the hell do the Brooklyn Nets fall? It's a talented roster, right? But this is a talented East, and I don't see them making out of the East right now. So I think this is not dead yet with the Nets and Kevin Durant, but I think Miami could finally breathe and move forward with another potential trade, or with this current roster.
And now that you say that, Bob, and I'll mention it so that way we can get the reactions from the guys. What Bobby just mentioned is the secondary options. Obviously, the people are going to be monitoring the Nets throughout the whole season to see if there's any turmoil, if there's any show of turmoil, or how do they incorporate Simmons into the offense? Do Simmons and Kyrie share the floor on a consistent basis? Because you try to get your best players always on the court. So that's going to be a constant monitoring. But before even training camp, one of the things that it triggers to me, and I know the Tyler Hero extension is a very popular topic, and I do believe they have a range of number already, probably like in the 4 years, 110, 120. He's not going to get the full rookie max. But the fact that he still hasn't signed it or no one has announced anything, you can obviously see that we're still in play for possible trade targets in Donovan Mitchell. So in regards to that, I'm a big believer, and I would love if we can possibly get Colin Sexton. I love him. I feel that he fits right in with us. I know he might cost you a first round pick, and I am a big believer in keeping assets. So Kenny, I'll start with you in this one. What are your secondary options, even if we don't run it back in a hypothetical that we can acquire that secondary superstar, megastar, whatever the case may be? Who are your targets if you're the GM, and what are you willing to give up?
I don't know if it's going to be any superstars. I just don't think that'll happen. I don't think the Heat have the assets for that. But I would, and this is like, I'm going to tell the audience, I don't have sources. I'm not that kind of person.
Absolutely.
But if I would monitor the Sacramento Kings situation, because right now they have a really interesting rookie in Keegan Murray. And if they're not as good as I think they will be, which is probably a play-in team, Harrison Barnes could probably come out on the market and they'll just say, hey, look, Keegan, this is your team. This is your floor. You just do everything you want. We're going to make the space for you. Then, as much trash as Duncan Robinson gets, and he wasn't very great this past season for the most part, he does fit really well with Domantas Sabonis and with De'Aaron Fox, whether it's in transition with Fox and spotting up a three, whether it's running off of these actions that are run through Sabonis. There's some stuff that can happen there. And so I think if they just want to get rid of Harrison Barnes, they may be able to take on Duncan, and that may be something real nice for both sides.
That's not bad. And like you mentioned, Duncan gets a lot of heat, but he can fit in a lot of teams right now that just need a shooter, a specialist. He's improved his dribbling, his drive kicks, but defense obviously still a work in progress. Wes, what do you feel? What do you feel are your top options if you can pursue it? And you're the GM of the Miami Heat. What do you do?
So Harrison Barnes is a name that I like a lot too. I agree with Kenny there. I'm actually looking right now. Is he an expiring? Yeah, he is an expiring contract.
Yes, he's an
expiring. That could be interesting if also Sacramento is looking to just get something for him. If they anticipate, look, we're probably going to let this guy walk. We're not going to pay him what other people are going to pay him because we got Murray sort of waiting here playing the same position. I just think that the Heat would hesitate to include a first-round pick in any kind of deal because they basically have a maximum of 3, and that's only if they like unlift the protections or if they lift the protections on the OKC pick that they owe. And they want to be in the star game, right? Like, let's remember they promised Jimmy Butler when they acquired him that they would pair him up with another superstar. Maybe they didn't anticipate Bam Adebayo being the all-star that he is. Maybe they did. I don't know. I think they're gonna see what Tyler Hero can do. I anticipate that he'll probably be the starting shooting guard this year, and that they'll probably just kind of give him run at that and say, "Look, man, can you be the offensive weapon that we needed in the playoffs last year?" But as far as the other stars, like I think Duncan Robinson does fit in Sacramento. Another thing to monitor would be Victor Oladipo. If you can combine Duncan Robinson and Victor Oladipo, there was a report out there. I don't remember where it was, but that Sacramento was maybe kicking the tires on Vic over the summer.
Okay.
So if that's somebody that they're interested in, then I hadn't heard that. But like I said, I can't remember where the report was from, but I don't know how real it is. But if that's something that they're interested in, depending on how Duncan Robinson and Victor Oladipo show out in the first half of the season, yeah, like you've got Vic under contract next year. Duncan Robinson also obviously under a long-term deal. If Sacramento's willing to do that, Harrison Barnes meets a lot of those needs that Miami's looking for and can obviously start at power forward for them. The other name I would look at, and look, I think the Donovan Mitchell thing, that's just not going to happen. The Knicks have too much to give. And then, okay, let's say Donovan Mitchell gets traded to the Knicks the way we all expect. Kevin Durant obviously off the table. Who's the superstar? I don't know. I just don't know. And I really do think Miami's going to hold on to their picks until that like sort of A-list star is available. I don't really see them including picks in a Duncan Robinson or a John Collins kind of swap. And you're not getting those players probably without picks. Maybe Harrison Barnes like we talked about, but we'll see. And that's not even going to be until the trade deadline, which is February. And that's way late into the regular season. So the one name I would keep an eye out, and I feel like we're just beating the same horse here, but Bradley Beal, man. It's Bradley Beal. That no trade clause was so interesting to me. And what I keep calling it is the anywhere but Miami clause. Because to me, that no trade clause is you can't trade me anywhere but Miami. Right? We know that Bradley Beal has looked at Miami for a while. For whatever reason, right, wrong, or in between, he has decided that he wants to stay in Washington. And maybe a part of that is the financial aspect of it, the fact that he can make more money there than he can anywhere. Well, dude, you got your supermax. You were just maxed out. More than anybody can be maxed out. You're going to be making $50 million a year. Money is not an issue for you anymore. And not if, but when you look around at Washington by the time the trade deadline rolls around, you're like, you know what? Turns out we still suck again. Who knew that was coming? Do you say, hey, I got my money. Maybe I start looking to play for a contender finally at this stage in my career. And if you're Miami at that point, do you go down that road? Now, they probably can't do anything on the Bradley Beal front until the offseason because if they do give Tyler Hero that extension, he's going to be in that poison pill provision and he's going to be virtually untradeable. And you would assume that Washington would be asking for Tyler Hero. Miami would not part with Bam Adebayo for Bradley Beal because they wouldn't do it for Kevin Durant. So why would you do it for Beal? But maybe over the offseason, this time next year, they're looking at Bradley Beal. And that's what's so interesting, I think, about Tyler Hero this season is that, you could sign him to the extension. You can give him that long-term security in terms of just the money, the dollar amount that he will be making under guaranteed salary. But this is another kind of spin for Tyler Hero, isn't it? Like, hey, I again think he'll be the starting shooting guard for a lot of different reasons. And they're going to see what he's got and they'll have a better determination of what his ceiling could be. And if they determine that it's not Bradley Beal or not whatever, the differences between cost, and they say, you know what, maybe we want to make that move, maybe that's the move. Other than that, I just don't know what superstar is going to shake loose from now and then.
And
So
Bob, before I go to you,
okay.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to follow up. Because let's say Miami doesn't make a move. Let's say they stick with what they have right now and they go into next season with the current roster. And yes, they lost PJ Tucker and but they were just outside of going to the finals. They lost in Game 7 to Boston, and it's pretty much running it back. But right now, that 4th spot, there's a question mark there. So my question for you guys would be, if the Heat stick with the current roster they have right now, who are you comfortable with starting at the 4? I mean, there's talk of Caleb Martin. Alex is throwing out Jimmy Butler or possibly Bam Adebayo and Omer at the center, to kind of play around. So have you guys put much thought into that? And what's the best option there that could possibly allow the Heat to go back in the top of the East, whether it's top 3, 2, 1? Kenny, if you could start with that, and then Wes follow up.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be Jimmy at the 4, and they'll slide Max back to the 3. With Max's improved defense, it kind of depends on how much you trust that. I trust it a lot. And so you can pair him next to Tyler at the 2 now, and it's not as bad because Max can hold his own. And so I think it's going to be, at least for the start of the season, it's going to be Jimmy at the 4, and then they'll just adjust from there. They'll see. We've all kind of forgotten about the draft pick this year. If he looks good or better than he did in a lot of some league, he'll get some time at the 4, not starting, I don't think. And so I think it's gonna be Jimmy starting, and then just the bench is gonna be by committee, just what they needed at the time, what adjustments they need to make, who they matched up against, and all that stuff.
I don't see Jimmy at the 4. I don't see it. This is a guy that they need basically to put up 30 and 10 in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And if you're kind of running him into the ground in the regular season by making him guard other power forwards, I think that's pretty rough for him.
I mean, they ran it last year a few times. That hybrid Jimmy at 4, they ran it a few times.
I think we'll see it. I don't think we'll not.
Yeah.
I just don't think they'll start with it. Right.
Okay.
And I think if they get really desperate, I actually would go the inverse on Kenny. I don't think they'll start with it, but if they get desperate, we could see it maybe later in the season if they just never are able to acquire a starting caliber power forward. So I'm not ruling it out. I think we'll definitely see it quite a bit. I just don't see them starting games that way. Because the one thing that PJ Tucker did, or a lot of things they did, but the one thing that was really valuable, I thought, was when Miami switches everything on defense, PJ Tucker would get pinned onto opposing centers a lot because Bam would obviously get switched onto the perimeter, and then PJ Tucker would sort of slide onto the 5s. It's one thing for Jimmy Butler to guard 4s, and the argument out there, I've heard it, and it's a good one, is hey, there's not that many big 4s out there, so what's the problem? Well, the problem is when Jimmy Butler gets switched onto those 5s, and other teams aren't stupid. They'll just do that. They'll run those 4 or 5 pick and rolls, get Jimmy switched, and then boom, now Jimmy's guarding Joel Embiid and other big centers in the East. And you just don't want that over the course of an 82-game season. So the one name I do think that I think they're going to try to avoid that, at least to start games. And I think it's going to be a pretty open competition at the 4 spot. Don't rule out Haywood Highsmith. This is not a prediction that Highsmith ends up starting the season, but just don't rule it out. He's bigger, taller than Caleb Martin is. Caleb Martin's only 6'5". It was nice to re-sign him. I'm a big Caleb Martin fan. He's not a power forward. He's a wing player. They really liked Haywood Highsmith in Summer League. They loved the performance they had. He told me that they were basically molding him after PJ Tucker, right? Everything that PJ does, they had him watching that film when he got on late last season. And so he's sort of been schooled in the art of the PJ Tucker a little bit. Now, you can't be expected to be PJ Tucker. Nobody can. But if he can kind of bring a little bit of that to the table, I would not rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, we remember last year, right? Max Strus, huge Summer League, super productive. Who is this guy? Just lighting it up, game-winning shots in Summer League and all this stuff. Next thing you know, he's starting by the end of the regular season. I think that if anybody's going to have that kind of path this coming season, it would be Haywood Highsmith. So I wouldn't rule it out.
And I'll tell you something, Wes. I love what you mentioned there because I kind of see last year's Vincent and Strus basically coming on the map and everybody outside of Miami knowing who they are. I see those two this year being Highsmith and Omer. I'm really big on Omer. I don't necessarily, like I tell him, I wouldn't be upset because I believe he has the same versatility that he can be like a Myers Leonard playing next to Bam. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see some minutes with him and Bam and the front court, depending on our matchups. Like the Celtics, I do believe in the Jimmy Butler hybrid at 4. I believe that I'm not a big fan of, I don't like defining teams by starting units because I believe in the transgression of the game. You start obviously your best combination. That's why, like you mentioned, I believe Hero will start. Hero will start, and I even threw it out there in the summer. When we drafted Jovic, if you're gonna have him as part of your rotation, I would put him with my starters because that's my best defensive unit right now. So you cover a lot of those things. Mm-hmm. He provides depth, scoring. He can create his own bucket at any moment. So he can shoot from. He has range. So he gives you that versatility. On defense, you will see them play probably more drop coverage. So you're not going to see them switching as much on to basically protect yourself by not having PJ Tucker.
Right.
But the dynamic, I see one of the lineups, and I want to get your point on this because I believe one of the lineups that could run other teams off the floor is the lineup of Lowry, interchanging Strus in this lineup. Lowry, Hero, Oladipo, Butler, and Bam. That is arguably your 5 most talented players that any one of those players can create their own bucket at any moment. They're all good defenders. Obviously, Tyler Hero is the outlet. And Tyler is not a bad team defender. It's just the on-ball defense, the stance. And the guest, Justin, that we had on last week, he mentioned a lot of people talk about Tyler getting bigger and stronger. He's like, he just has to build his core. If he works out those legs, and even he can make up for the inside out wingspan that he has. But when I see the squads and one lineup, how much playing time do you really think? Because I'm intrigued by this, and actually I sent it to Bobby yesterday. Well, the Jovic concept, it's so intriguing to me because it fits the mold of the stretch 4 of the NBA. He is like a 7-foot version of Tyler Hero. He has the guard skills because he was a guard and he's had a massive growth spurt. So he has all the talent in the world. And we know Spo. Spo slowly incorporates players. He kind of gives you a role. That's why I don't think Omer will start right away. I think Omer, it will be your backup 5 unless Denman is brought in for insurance competition. But I don't see any way that Omer is not your backup 5. Now, I just want to ask you guys, rotational players. I'm a big fan of going 10 deep. What is your rotation right now? Because we have a logjam with Robinson that could have been moved with trades, that possibly could be moved in a trade. What is your 10-man rotation right now that you're comfortable going in, even if it was playoff time? I'll start with you, Wes, in that one.
Yeah, so the starters to me, I pretty much already listed them out. As far as the backups, I think Dedmon is going to be the backup 5 at this point early in the season. I think there's 2 reasons why they re-signed Dwayne Dedmon to that $4 million contract, right?
Okay.
The reason number 1 is that $4 million contract is kind of chunky and tradable, right? You could pair that with another deal, and now you're able to send that out and maybe get a better player. Yeah, exactly. Get a better player back. Like you put him with Duncan, and all of a sudden you're looking at a $21 million player, right? Doesn't mean you can get that player. Depends on what draft picks you're willing to part with and everything like that. Flanagan's Cup. Good job. Appreciate that. But the other part of it too is that if you listen to Pat Riley's end of season press conference, it's pretty clear that they're not sold on Omer Yurtseven right now playing a rotation role. There's things that he has to get better on. Specifically, what Pat Riley mentioned was just being better defensively, right? Like getting out on the perimeter. I know that they want to play drop when Omer Yurtseven's in and even when Dwayne Dedmon is in. But you got to do something out on the perimeter. This is the way Hassan Whiteside got ran out of town, right? It's just he wouldn't do anything on the perimeter. And then there's other things defensively too. Like he needs to get stronger, like especially in his lower body, he has to get stronger. There's things there. But by re-signing Dwayne Dedmon to this tradable contract, who's a veteran who you trust in those sort of spot backup 5 minutes, you basically buy Omer Yurtseven another half season worth of time to develop. And I think by the time we get into the playoffs, Omer Yurtseven will probably be the backup 5. Dwayne Dedmon might be traded at that point, based on the sort of the planning of this. But right now, like going into the season, I think Dedmon would be the backup 5. But I think I think Oladipo. I think the other reason why you see Tyler move into the starting lineup is that it basically frees up the 6-man spot for Oladipo. Oladipo will be your prime 6-man, playing 30 minutes a game. Yes. I agree with you, Alex. I think that lineup is. I went through this exercise of sort of just breaking down like every lineup I'm interested in seeing, and that was the one I circled as most interested in seeing because I don't know if it'll be good or bad. Like who knows? We also have like a bunch of guys who want the ball. Like how's that going to work? So I don't know. Like it could be awesome. I'm really interested to see. I love the idea of playing Bam next to Dedmon or Yurtseven in spot minutes, and then also having the option to go small with Jimmy at the 4. Like, one thing that this Heat team is versatile, right? They're going to be able to throw a lot of different looks at other teams. And so I think there's a lot of really interesting lineups that Spo can go to. And he's been really good at sort of having his thumb on the feel of the pulse of the game and knowing when he needs to go to what. But to answer your question, and I'm sorry that this took so long, but
no, man.
Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Victor Oladipo, either Caleb Martin or Haywood Highsmith at that 4 spot, whoever's starting, whoever's coming off the bench, and then Dedmon is your backup 5, I think is what, like, as we go into the season, what your sort of 5-man bench is going to look like, with maybe Duncan Robinson getting some spot minutes in the first half because you kind of have to.
Yeah. That's the truth. Before I go, you do, Kenny. Even with Duncan Robinson, like, at the point, if you don't trade him, it becomes a moment that you basically have to play him because he does provide spacing for you. You got to showcase him. He provides spacing for you. It unlocks a lot of things. I think you've spoken Oladipo. I think Oladipo's going to come out on an absolute tear. He hasn't been this way he hasn't been solid in 2 years where he's been able to fully work on his game, fully be unleashed. You saw the defensive. He is top notch defensively, and people forget who he was as an all around player. And that could be the key addition to this Heat squad that people haven't really paid attention to. And Kenny, before I go to you, I want to thank everybody listening. Like, subscribe, share. We appreciate all your comments. Any things you want us to ask, please do so. And I'm going to go with this one with Tiff. Thank you for listening. I'm going to go to you, Kenny. Why does it matter who is at the 4? They all switch and cover all spots, which is absolutely true. So I'll put the floor to you, Ken. When you're going to give me a rotation, now you have this in mind.
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer both. So I think the starters, at least to start out, Wes does make a great point about preserving Jimmy, but I think just right now, until they figure something out, I think the starters will be Kyle, Tyler, Max, Jimmy, Bam. Then you'll have Dedmon. Haywood Highsmith was a great pull because I completely forgot about him, and I do think he is going to play some heavy minutes this year. Caleb, Gabe, Oladipo, and then on the outside looking in, you may see some Jovic because I do love the idea of Jovic, but we saw some league. He is still very raw. He has some stuff to work on. Although that stuff does seem pretty easy to fix, especially for a coach staff like the Heat. So I think he may see some time by like January, February. But that's my 10-man rotation, I think, to start out. Duncan will also get some minutes here and there because they have to, like y'all said already, have to kind of showcase him. Now, that question, they have a great point as far as the 4 goes. Spo is a magician and a mastermind, and so I think even with the roster he has right now, he's going to find some ways to make it work, at least until he doesn't have to, so they make some kind of move. But right now, it is going to be a lot of Jimmy. It is going to be a lot of – I do think we may see more Omer Yurtseven. That's going to depend on his jumper, though. His jumper up to this point has been pretty inconsistent. If he's working on it this summer, then you can play him with Bam and kind of like find minutes for him, kind of make up for a lot of size here and there. And so that's a great question because the answer is, hey, you're absolutely right. We are going to see a bunch of different stuff at the 4.
Bobby, we'll wrap it up with you. Tell me what you feel, man.
Oh, man, I agree at the beginning. I think Bam, Dedmon, I think Alex just hung up on Omer, but that's okay. That's another conversation.
I see a lot of good things, Omer, man.
That dude's been pushing Omer since last year.
Oh,
I don't know what it is.
He's a rebounding magnet.
He was wrong about Justice Winslow. He was wrong about Whiteside.
Here we go to Justin Winslow point. Jesus Christ, man.
He's trying to bring up people, dude. No, okay.
Always. This doesn't end.
No, but I agree. Bam, Dedmon. I'll stick with the Caleb Martin. Jovic will get some time. Jimmy, Strus, Oladipo, Tyler, Lowry, Gabe Vincent, and then Duncan Robinson until he is moved is how I kind of have it right now. And I want to follow that up with, I'll start with Wes. But so looking at this Eastern Conference, because it has gotten better and it's strong. I mean, obviously Boston with Brogdon and Milwaukee, Philadelphia to be healthy, Brooklyn, currently as the Heat is set up, and yeah, Spo, mastermind, all that. It's absolutely true. If the Heat stick with this current lineup, do you guys feel confident? And with the Heat in the East, where do you kind of see them falling?
I got him at 5th. I got him 5th. I got probably Milwaukee, Boston, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, and then Miami. And I think that Milwaukee, Boston, and Brooklyn are pretty clearly ahead of Miami. Now Brooklyn, little asterisk, like depends. Like does Kyrie Irving find another reason not to want to play basketball? Like we'll see. Does Ben Simmons ever play basketball again? We'll see. But if those guys play a decent amount, yeah, I would put them in that mix. And then Philly, I love their offseason, man. I'm a big Joel Embiid fan. Am I a sucker for falling for the James Harden stuff? Maybe. Like he's coming back and better ever, super committed, team first, taking a salary pay cut, like whatever. Maybe I'm a sucker. I don't know, but I'm buying into it right now. So I like their squad. And so I've got Miami. I've got Miami fit. Not even, and I don't want it to be like, hey, you lose PJ Tucker and now went from in the Eastern Conference Finals to not. But it's partly that, but it's also partly like everybody else got better and you just didn't. And that's part of it. Like even if you were to stay the same, you would get worse just in virtue of everybody else improving their team and you not doing that. So I still think the Heat are ripe for a trade at the deadline. I don't expect this to be the roster by the end of the season. I would be surprised if it were the roster at the end of the season. So barring something like that, but as the roster currently is, to answer your question, firmly at 5th. And then I think there's a pretty steep drop off, but there's some interesting teams there, right? Like Atlanta's interesting, Cleveland's interesting, Chicago's interesting. So you can kind of go down the line, but Toronto, yeah, you're right, Alex. I should have mentioned them. Like Toronto, if stuff pops for them, that's a team that has an all NBA guy in Fred VanVleet, and a borderline all NBA guy in Siakam. And Scotty Barnes is the real deal. Like if that team pops and they go on a run here and maybe injury luck and goes one way or the other, they could end up finishing over Miami. That shouldn't be ruled out either. So yeah, they're probably 5th or 6th.
I think that's very valid and fair. What are you thinking, Kenny?
So the Bucks are still the team that scares me the most. I understand the results they had in the playoffs this year, but Middleton was hurt. That team still fucking terrifies me. I can curse. That team still terrifies me because Drew Holiday is probably still the best perimeter defender in the NBA. You still have Giannis, but I think without a doubt the best off-ball defender in the NBA. They got scoring. Giannis, you can't build a wall around him anymore because he's such an improved passer now. And so I think running into them again would scare me. The Celtics, they're going to get better. They are better. The Brogdon move, I don't think it makes them as good as people were making it out to be, but it does make them better at the same time. It is an upgrade. And then I have the Heat after that. I'm going to be completely honest, like completely unbiased. I think the PJ stuff is going to depend on how they use him in Philly, and Doc is a pretty stubborn coach. And so if they're going to just stuff him in a corner, I don't really see that being that impactful. Now, on the defensive end, that's going to be trouble for a lot of teams because PJ is PJ. But I think the thing we kind of have to remember, too, even last year, we only saw the team healthy for a total of maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then the playoffs came and everybody got hurt again. And so I think we can't underestimate just how stacked this Heat team is even without PJ. Mm-hmm. And so I think if they're a little more healthy, Kyle obviously won't have his personal stuff again. I still think they're top 3. Now, I don't see them finishing above Milwaukee because Milwaukee, like I said, is terrifying again. But I can see 2 or 3.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you, Bob, because I know we've talked about it before. And one of the things that I feel that people overlook, sometimes subtraction. I like subtraction, addition by subtraction. I'm not saying losing PJ Tucker is an addition. Committing, it was kind of like the same situation with Jay Crowder. Do you commit that extra money? Do you handicap yourself? Because we would have given PJ Tucker that contract. We're not even in the KD situation. We can't even have that conversation. Contract, salary cap wise. And I'm expecting, this is just me, a big growth from Hero, another step with Bam, and also a change in offensive philosophy. That's not a drastic change, but you will see more. Jimmy Butler's going to have to be creating less in this offense, which will conserve him during the season. He can focus even more defensively, rebounding, still creating, but not to the rhythm where he became a needed. You're basically your needed scorer. Your only scorer that can actually get a bucket at moments time. Hero's evolution. He is arguably right now your second scorer. He was basically all of last year. He is your second most pure natural scorer, probably your most pure shooter. Then you have a fit Kyle Lowry, a committed Kyle Lowry. But we understand, obviously, I don't know the details of what was going on in his personal life last year, but you can tell it affected him, not only physically, but mentally, emotionally. It drains you. And the whole season, a new move, a new team. We understand that. I'm going to judge Kyle Lowry by this year, and I'm going to judge this lineup by this year, even with the subtraction of PJ. And I still have it. I agree with Wes in the top tier of the East, but I personally have them like Kenny said, top 3, maybe 2. Boston really doesn't scare me. I feel that we match up with Boston, and this is crazy to me. But teams that really scare me, for example, are like the surprise teams, like the Clevelands. Those are teams that can surprise you come playoff time. But Milwaukee's a difficult matchup for us. Philadelphia improved. I still think they need more shooting. And you said everything's going to come down to health. But Boston really doesn't scare me. I understand the depth, and they also added Danilo, but that weakens you defensively. We can throw some hybrid lineups and possibly run them off the court with a Williams, with an older Horford. So that really doesn't scare me. But for me, I still say top 3. I have them finishing 2. I'll say that. Milwaukee number 1 for sure. And the Nets, it all depends on.
No, I like your points. I like your points, though, Alex, because that is kind of key, right? I mean, I agree more with Wes. I think 4-5 is pretty fair, but you can't sleep like what Kenny was saying and what you were saying, Alex. I mean, the Heat. There's a lot of injured players last year. A lot of the key players were out, and the Heat were still one of the top teams, almost the top team in the East, and then finished number 1. But those are the X factors
from the finals.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Lowry coming back with a chip on his shoulder, clear-minded, better shape. Does Tyler actually take that next step? Does Bam Adebayo become more aggressive than passive? Those are all keys. And those are all, I don't know how you say that, X factors or whatever. But
absolutely,
do they hit those marks?
Absolutely.
And if they do, okay, then yeah, they could be top 3. And again, I don't agree on the Boston thing. I think the Boston Celtics have gotten better, and I hate to admit that. I think that's the homer in you speaking. And I love you.
No, I didn't say they didn't get better. I didn't say they got better. They got better. They got better. They just don't scare me.
Hold on. You had your time.
They don't scare me.
Hold on a second. But I think Milwaukee, obviously, number 1, right? I mean, the best player in the NBA, in my opinion, Giannis. They've gotten better. They're going to be healthy. But that's the other thing. Health is a factor too. The reason why the Heat were number 1 and it was because there was a lot of, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, the drama there, they just Boston ended up outlasting them in Game 7 and final seconds. Right. So, no, I think 4 or 5, I think that's pretty fair. I think health plays a big key in that. And obviously, does Hero and Bam Adebayo take that next step? And can we trust them to make that next step?
Mm-hmm. And now that you mentioned that, Bob, I'm gonna segue so we can wrap this up, and I'm gonna talk about the culture, what Heat culture really is. Because honestly, one part also that people realize, last year we secured the number 1 seed, but we also were missing Bam for 20-something games, Jimmy for 20-something games, Lowry, I believe, close to 25 games if I'm not mistaken. So the depth came into and what I love about this is and this is not being homer, this is just analyzing basketball. When you have so much versatility, like you mentioned, Wes, you have players that you can pluck in at any given moment, and they're playing the system. You have talented players that you can unlock, and you have players that can play 2 or 3 positions. But I'm a big fan of positionless. Like, they just play. They're basketball players. They're athletes. They can play multiple positions, and no matter where you are, you will succeed as part of the unit. And I believe that's a big testament to the culture. And there's nothing bigger than the culture than Udonis Haslem. And like we found out, you kind of knew it. You were a little scared. I got to admit, I was a little scared at the end because I wanted UD to come back for his 20th season. And I understand as a man, as you get older, I have kids, I have other priorities. You kind of understand the businessman, the father. You want to be there for those practices. I believe he has a kid. He has his oldest son is playing college football, so you want to be there. I love the fact because how emotional I have a very deep connection, obviously, with my father, with my mother. So you understand the dreams and goals you have together, aspirations, something you want to achieve. And there's nothing better, and it couldn't happen to a better man. And the recognition that he's getting, Udonis is the epitome of Miami Heat. And I wanted to ask you guys, even in the whole aspect of things, the scope of professional sports, is there really an athlete that has meant as much, like a homegrown athlete? Obviously, LeBron to Cleveland, a little iffy because he's from Akron. Like LeBron, Udonis is actually from Miami. But is there any other athlete in the realm of sports or alone basketball that has meant so much to the city, to his team, to the intricacies of what this city is? I'll go with you, Kenny, if you want, so you can kick it off.
Yeah, I would probably have to say no. I think so. For one, I'm gonna admit a bias. Me and Udonis Haslem from the same neighborhood, so anything he does is right in my book. Yeah, and so, but just him being from here, and I think also I didn't realize it until I grew up, but I lived not too when I was in kindergarten, first grade, somewhere around that time. I lived pretty close to Miami High. And what I did know is that when Miami High played, the whole neighborhood was empty. Everybody was at the game and trying to get to the game. I didn't realize until later on that they were going to watch those Udonis Haslem teams. And so he means that. He was my friend from high school. Actually just met Udonis last week because my friend's wife's cousin had gotten out of prison for a crime he didn't commit, and Udonis is friends with him. And so Udonis just showed up to the park in the middle of the hood, just like with the people, just talking, eating, all that stuff. That's who Udonis Haslem is. And even on the basketball side, I think what people don't realize is we can talk about, he hasn't really played significant minutes since 2016, but around that same time, that's when the Heat are really building this identity as a team who's developing these undrafted players. And so they come into these training camps and they have this guy who's been here 15, 16, 17 years who was undrafted, who they can go to, who they can go to the advice for. That's the example. That's the motivation. Like, hey, I did this. I've been here this long time. I'm royalty in the franchise. You can do this too. Work on this, work on that. Do this, say this, say that. And you can have – so now they go through that with him, and now you have a Max Strus contributing to playoff minutes. You have a Gabe Vincent. You have a Duncan Robinson. You have all these guys who have developed from being undrafted, and I think Udonis is a lot more important to that aspect of the organization than people tend to realize.
Yeah.
Wes, you can follow up, man.
Sure. Well, I agree with everything Kenny said. The interesting thing about Udonis Haslem is he probably has more street cred than I think any NBA player ever has had. Ever. This is the rare player who went undrafted, played in Europe, came back to the NBA, carved out a starting role, started for a championship team, took a pay cut to take a sacrifice to bring in LeBron and CB and other stars, went and won a couple more championships, and then played until his 20th season with the same team, which is something only a handful of players have ever done. Dirk, Kobe, Udonis Haslem. And so this is the rare player who could speak to any player, and be a mentor to that player. If you're undrafted, UD could take you under his wing and say, hey, buddy, here's how you carve out a role in the NBA and how you get a long career. You're undrafted. The odds are already stacked against you. Here's how you can carve out a living for you and create some generational wealth for you and your family. If you are somebody who wants to win a championship, Udonis Haslem can bring you in the way that he did with LeBron and CB and say, hey, this is what it takes to win a championship. Let me show you the way. If you're a player who already has won a championship, Udonis Haslem could speak to you. You already won one. Let me show you how to win more, right? He could talk to anybody. You were a starter. I was a starter. You're not getting any playing time now because you're a little bit older in your career. I did the same thing, and I still bought into the mantra of the organization and the team concept. I don't know that there's a player that's ever done what Udonis Haslem has done and achieved in the NBA. He has the ultimate amount of street cred because he has credibility with every kind of player that can exist. And that's the fact. Hey, you came over from Europe. I got you too. I did that as well. Like it's an incredible career. And I think one that we don't fully appreciate right now in the moment, but it's one that I think we'll look back on and be like, that was insane. That might've been the most remarkable career, not the greatest career, not by any stretch, but maybe the most remarkable career that we've ever seen in the NBA. It's wild what this dude has done. Not even to mention that he's from Miami. Like that's just like cherry on the cake. Like
it's a movie. Like it's a movie. Like
it's movie-like. I don't know that there's another player that means as much to a city. It's hard, right? Like the homegrown thing is definitely a factor, but you look at what MJ means to Chicago, what Steph means to the Bay Area, what Dwayne Wade means to Miami, even though he's a Chicago guy. Like what Derek Jeter, he was born in New Jersey, like what he means to the Yankees. Like there's stuff like that. But I just think about it. It's different because of how just different is the right word, I guess. It is so different. We've never seen anything quite like it.
And Bob, before I go to you to wrap it up, I want to mention something that now you brought it up, Wes, and Kenny, you said it. It's funny how we've during the Pat era, we've remade our organization a good 4 to 5 times, different eras. But when you mentioned after LeBron leaving, we've always developed players because even before some people that are older, we remember Ike Austin. Ike Austin came over to the Heat. He lost a good 30 to 40 pounds, rejuvenated his career. We have the culture, which is to me impressive because I was looking around the whole NBA. Even our coaching staff, if you notice the common trend is they're all former players, except for Octavio, Coach O, but Malik Allen, Chris Quinn, Anthony Carter, even the scouts. We are talking about a family environment, which is very rare in professional sports. And that's why when people hear the culture, they think it's just a sell, merchandise and all that. But we kind of re-imaged the franchise in the 2016s, 2017s, and we became this culture-driven, and we're not for everybody. And that is amazing because unless you're from Miami, you really don't get it. And a lot of people, us Miamians, we got a bad rep everywhere else. Like when you say, like from Miami, like, you're from Miami. It's like we have all the United States. Like for some reason, you say we're from Miami, and I don't know if it affects us in national media, but there's always a sly on Miami, and always even highlights. If you see highlights on SportsCenter and everything, there's always a player doing something to a Heat player. Like if there's a dunk, like a poster dunk, it's always on the Heat player. It's always like a bias against us, and it's because they hate us because they ain't us. But I love the fact that UD, because I don't need to celebrate the player, is just a human being. Like a lot of people identify with UD. You can be from all walks of life, all over Miami, Liberty City, Hialeah, Kendall, wherever you're from, and you identify with UD, the man. And to me, I'll never forget this, and I'll send it off to you, Bob. He was the most humble person I've ever met. I was like 16 or 17 years old, and our high school coach took the whole varsity team to the game. And this is when we were back in black. We made the playoffs. This was 2004. So UD was a rookie. Wade was a rookie. We were in game one when Wade hit the floater to win it. And I'll never forget, UD stopped. He stopped, and he had this big Hummer. And he signed all 50. We were the only 15 kids there. He signed each and every one autographs, and he gave us the sneakers. 18-inch. I'll never forget. 18 size sneakers. The only thing he said is one of my boys got in his truck. He's like, man, get out of my goddamn truck. He was on top of him. That's the only thing he said. But it was the most humblest person, the nicest person. And you can tell that even post-retirement, he's not going to coach, but he's always going to be an intricacy of the organization. Obviously, you'll get an official title. His number will be retired, but he always will be the bearer of Heat culture. And with this, Bob, I into you. Your final thoughts, man.
No, you guys, I don't know what else to say because Wes hit it, Kenny, and then you, Alex. I just say, when you talk about Heat culture, there's the pillars of Heat culture, and he's one of those pillars. I would have to say, of course, it's Pat Riley, Coach Spo, Alonzo Mourning, and Udonis Haslem. Those are the four pillars of the culture, that really show that. He's most deserving of the honor to be one of the I think Kobe and Dirk were the only other two to be with a team for 20 seasons. Mm-hmm. I mean, people could say, he's taking a roster. Anybody who says that they obviously don't know what the hell they're talking about because he's very deserving of that spot to be on that roster because he gives so much more than just playtime to those guys. Mm-hmm. And Wes hit all those nails on the head. I mean, that's why there's not much for me to say. I mean, this guy is so deserving. 3 championships, played with all the greats, Shaq, LeBron, Wade, Bosh, and an experience of being undrafted, playing time, no playing time, everything. And, of course, you got the street cred and all that whatnot, actually being from Miami. He's one of the, obviously in Miami, probably in the NBA, people don't respect him as much. But if you're a real true Heat fan, he's top 10 probably as one of the best ever to play. And I'm happy Pat Riley said his jersey is going to be retired because it's very deserving. So yeah, for me, my only thing to add to that is this one of the pillars of Heat culture with Riley, Spo, Zoe, and Udonis Haslem.
And it's funny, Bobby. For me, the biggest commemoration is I would just retire the 15 spot. I would never have another Heat team have 15 players. I just have 14. So he always.
Well, they kind of already have because they haven't had
they have
players.
They salary cap themselves.
Can I say Can I just say one thing about the Heat culture?
Absolutely, man.
I think people romanticize it, like Heat fans, like Heat culture with like a capital C. And I've been a little annoyed with like the merchandising aspect of it. Like culture is like on every Heat t-shirt now. I'm like, all right, can we just relax on it? But like people like what Heat, like when we talk about what the culture of the Heat organization really is, it's not that complicated. It really is just players buying in. and buying into doing the work and to the team concept. And that's it. And it's not, I shouldn't say it's not. It should not be a rare thing. It shouldn't be something that we're like talking about, right? It shouldn't be something that has pillars. It shouldn't be a thing that's sort of like celebrated. It should just be the way it is, right? Like and this is not like an anti-player empowerment thing, but it's just like
no, I don't.
It is just sort of like you've got teams trying to manufacture what is a quote unquote culture, right? You hear Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant talk about it all the time in Brooklyn. It's really hard. It's a really hard thing to do. And I when I covered the Golden State Warriors, like those two organizational cultures could not be more different, right? Warriors is like kumbaya, everybody be happy, joy the game. Miami's like you're in the military, push-ups at 5 a.m., like get after it. But the general concept is the same in that like from the top of the organization down to the 15th guy on the roster, down to the ball boys and the trainers and the guys in the video room, they just know what the mission statement is. And they all say the same thing whenever you talk to them independently. Like whatever that mission statement is, they'll just repeat it. It's like the same mantra. It's the same ethos. It's the same thing that they're just going after all the time. It's just one goal. And that's how good organizations are run. The best Fortune 500 companies, like it's the best podcasts, like the best anything is just run that way. And so when we romanticize it, I think we almost lose what it actually is. And what it is just like people just buying into what it is that this business, this independent organization is trying to accomplish.
That's you summarized perfect. Kenny, any final words, man?
Well, first, thanks for having me, but I do want to kind of like pick up on what Wes was saying also.
Yes.
As far as the teams around the league trying to duplicate it in some sense, we're really lucky as Heat fans to be in a position where it's just kind of natural. At least I understand like the marketing stuff does get pretty annoying. I admit that. But the thing we have to understand also is because yesterday I was watching the Lakers have a documentary out and
amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Oof. And so you remember, Pat Riley coached Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I'm real big like the history of the NBA. I just have no use for that. But people don't remember like before Pat Riley, Kareem had stages in his career where people called him lazy, uncommitted on defense, all this stuff. Pat Riley became the coach. All that changed as old as Kareem was. He went over to the Knicks. They were pretty good teams. He brought an identity over to them with the Charles Oakley and the Patrick Ewing and these real aggressive teams. And then he comes down to the Heat.
Yeah.
Same thing. And he has full reins on the organization. So now we have that. And so I don't think Wes is right 100% about the teams trying to duplicate it. But what I love is that they can't. It's just not possible. They don't make guys like Pat Riley anymore. And so it's just we've looked up into this.
And no, when you say Kenny, they don't make like Pat anymore. But then Pat basically cultivated Spo and Adam Simon. That's why I think even Adam Simon, Adam Simon's been interviewed for a lot of jobs. I don't think Adam Simon's going anywhere. The hierarchy of Miami has the transition to go from this culture to just continue the culture. When Pat retires, if Pat ever retires, because at this point, he's probably waiting for another championship. But you just see it in Pat Riley, the respect, the aura. But like you mentioned, it's from top to bottom. And it didn't happen overnight, but you need to have someone there from the top, and it trickles down. Everything trickles down. And Bob, any other thoughts?
No, man. I just want to thank Kenny and Wes for taking the time to come on to Goon Squad. I mean, it's huge, and you guys were amazing, and I hope that you guys would consider to come back sometime to continue talking Miami Heat.
Yeah,
of course, guys. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, guys. Just like Bobby said, we truly appreciate it from the heart. And he knows he tries to get everybody on because he knows I love talking so much basketball, and he's just tired of hearing me. So he's just, as soon as you guys want to come back, you're welcome back, buddy. So once again, thank everybody for listening today. Like, subscribe. My brother Bobby, love you, man. Kenny, Wes, appreciate it. Much love. Follow them. If you guys really love Heat, you're gonna love Kenny and Wes. So hasta luego, Miami. Hump day.